All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome in. Thank you so much for waiting. We're going to start the meeting at about 9:34 a.m., and I see it looks like everything's working with the technology. So hope everyone had a wonderful holiday, and hopefully you made it through without having the flu or anything else that was going around, so that's good. I see everybody here that's looking good and healthy. I feel like we're flying first class here at MSDE, and that's mostly because we have a lot of legroom because a good portion of you are attending virtually. But anyway, I kind of like it better when I feel like I'm flying coach with everybody here. But if it looks online like we're spread out a little bit, we are. So anyway, so welcome to our first class flight to, I don't know, 2026, I guess. All right, so welcome in, everybody. I'm so glad everyone's here. All right, so I'll call the meeting to order. We do have a couple of guests just to mention. Okay, Frank Skinner is here from MS, the Maryland State Education Association, so we welcome him as usual, and anybody else who happens to be here. All right, we would open up for public comment. Is there anyone who registered for public comment? I didn't see any. Okay, all right, and that leads us next to any announcements that anyone may have. Ebony, did you have anything?
Not today. I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. And I'm looking. Is Hannah on? I'm looking at my Brady Bunch screen here.
Hannah is not. Not yet.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I'll tell you what. Let's move ahead a little bit, and that'll take us to the approval of the December meeting minutes. And I just wanted to mention, if anybody was searching through the last minutes that were posted online, our November minutes had inadvertently posted sort of a draft, which is not what we approved. So we brought that to the attention of Kelly, and she fixed it almost immediately, so that's a more updated version. There was some information in that section just regarding our work with the AIB and the state survey and so forth that needed to be cleaned up for some accuracy, and that, of course, was in the version we voted on, but a previous version got posted. So I think we've taken care of that, and I want to thank Kelly for doing that so quickly. All right, so I'll give you a second if you can pull out the December 4th, 2025 minutes, and let's give everybody a second just to take a look at that. All right, so let me open it up for discussion. If anybody sees anything that needs to be changed, additions, deletions, corrections, and so forth, we'll entertain that, and then we'll take a motion to approve with any changes that we make. Anybody see anything that needs to be corrected or changed in any way? I did notice when we get to the communications update, it says that Ms. Hornback and Dr. Shockley will meet with the Accountability and Implementation Board on December 11th to review the exit survey. Kind of gives the impression maybe a survey has been written, which it hasn't, so we might want to just change that out to continue work on. Might be a little bit more accurate. So changing it from review the exit survey to continuing work on, I think would be a little more accurate. It's a minor thing, but I don't want someone to think that something's already been written. All right, anyone with anything to add for this part of the business? All right, seeing no additions, corrections, deletions, I will entertain a motion to adopt the December 4th, 2025 minutes of the Professional Standards Teacher Ed Board.
I will move the minutes, Karen Yoho.
All right, so moved. We need a second, please.
Second.
All right, seconded by Dr. Hadley. Any further discussion? All right, I think we can do this all in favor. Just say aye or raise your hand. All right. right. Any abstentions? Any voting against? All right, well, then it looks as though our minutes have been approved. All right, so now that takes us on to, we're going to wait for the state board update, so that would take us on to the communications update. Dr. Shockley and I did meet with the state board president, and I asked Dr. Shockley if she'd give a little bit of a review of how that went. I was very happy with the meeting.
Same. And good morning, everyone. Happy January. So yes, we met with Dr. Josh Michael. He extended an invitation to connect with us, and we amicably replied, and we were excited to do so. We had the opportunity to talk about, to have introductions, as well as talk about shared interest across the boards. We also were able to just share ideas about education, P to 20, in the state of Maryland. It was an inspiring conversation. I think that he certainly pushed our thinking around some of the work of our board, and I think that we hopefully did the same for him. And there was also opportunities for some ongoing connection between both the chair and vice chairs of both boards going forward. Darren was able to provide a lot of history to this board and the kind of work that has happened on this board over the years, and really help set a context for the role of PSTEB and some of the work that we have ahead. And so overall, a wonderful meeting and a great opportunity to connect to the state board, and we look forward to future connections.
All right, thank you for the update.
Sure.
Any questions about how that meeting went? There were a number of areas, of course, that he highlighted that are of interest to this board as well as interest to the state board as well. He did start out by talking about the concern over the number of conditionals and how much that has gone up so much. In fact, we looked at some of the statistics
We did.
On the call.
We did.
And also just the attrition rate for those folks as well as teachers in general. So,
For
you know, we of course shared that that was a concern that we had as well. So, and it was very productive, and there was an opportunity, of course, an invitation to meet again and continue our work on these things.
Yes.
All right, thank you for that update.
Of
Appreciate
course.
it. All right, anything else for the communications update? Anything going on that anybody wants to share?
I have a question. I feel like in the December meeting, Kelly shared that there is a Grow Your Own conference that happens. Is it in January? I thought that someone mentioned that, and I just wanted to, or maybe it was Dr. Woodward. Dr. Woodward, was that you?
Yes, it's actually, yes, ma'am. It's in New Orleans this year. It's going to be January 28th, 27th through the 30th. So it's the Wednesday through the Friday.
Thank you,
No
Darren.
problem. I can forward that information to Kelly to share with everyone if that's something that of interest.
It's of interest. Darren's recap of the meeting with Josh Michael reminded me of a lot of the conversation that this board has had around supportive conditional teachers and grow your own opportunities. So thank you, Dr. Woodward, for sharing that.
All right, any other communications to be shared? All right, that's great. All right, well, let's backtrack now to the state board update. And Hannah, you are right on time as usual. We're off time, so I'm glad that you're here. Are you ready to share with us the state board update at this point?
I am. Good morning, all, and Happy New Year. It is good to be with you this morning. So I'm going to, as you may know, December was a really big month for the board. January is shaping up to be equal, well, maybe not equally as big, but it's going to be another dense month. So I'll start by running through what the state board did in December and then give you all a little preview of what's to come over in a couple of weeks at the full board. So interestingly, we kind of kicked off the December meeting with a few calendar waiver requests from both Queen Anne's and Garrett County Public Schools to use MLK Day as an inclement weather makeup day. And there was some really interesting conversation amongst the board. The board ultimately requested that the state superintendent, include in an upcoming transmittal, which is communication that goes to all local superintendents every week from MSDE, that Martin Luther King Day should not be scheduled as a school day, and that the state board will only start to consider inclement weather makeup days beginning in the January meeting, so that we're not we're not in the business of approving or even kind of using a lot of board time to discuss those makeup days for when school systems haven't even run out of their inclement weather days. So that was a pretty interesting way to kick off our December meeting. On the consent calendar, we also approved an adult high school pilot program waiver request. So this has, for adult high schools, this is just a, sorry, my dog. This is just a waiver for some of the service learning requirements that just aren't necessarily a fit for adult high school programs. We also granted permission to publish transportation technology facility design guidelines. So those are for CTE programs that work with transportation, and those are updating the facility guidelines for those units within a school because they do have a pretty large footprint in a school building. We also celebrated our 2026 National School Counselor of the Year from Anne Arundel County Public Schools. She was Maryland's first National School Counselor of the Year, so we were really excited to host her and celebrate the amazing work that she does with her high schoolers. We also, in kind of the CTE space, we granted permission to adopt the CTE joint vision. So that brings together the Department of Labor, AIB, the CTE committee of the Governor's Workforce Development Board. And really it's a short kind of vision document for how all of these players in the sandbox are going to play together and kind of what our goals are for together as we kind of embark on this pretty big project together. We received the presentation. We will actually vote on the approving or voting to adopt the recommendations in January, but for the Maryland Accountability Advisory Committee final report, so that wrapped up and the board received a presentation on that. We didn't vote on it, but we will vote to acknowledge the recommendations of that report in January. We also, in response to the Office for the Inspector General for Education, who identified Somerset County as having some process questions or process deficiencies, we took action on that report from the OIGE and conditioned and said, we didn't, take any aid away, but we said, if you don't come into compliance within a specified time limit, then we will explore, these options, including conditioning state aid. So we voted to approve that. We also granted the big ticket item that took up a lot of time, and I'm sure many of you are familiar. We granted permission to publish the charter school program regulations for commensurate funding. We approved a suite of amendments that came from the table at the actual meeting. I believe there were 6. And in the summary of actions document, those are listed out in more detail. I don't want to go into all of them, but happy to answer questions on those if you have any. And then we had a couple of other higher profile COMAR. So we granted permission to publish the student attendance policy regulations. So those are a result of a year or more of work from the attendance task force that has brought together national, state, local experts in this to really examine how Maryland can strengthen and improve our chronic absence regulations. We also granted permission to republish the programs for library media services, adding a little bit more flexibility at the school level for those schools that may not have a full-time library media specialist. We also adopted our 2026 legislative platform. And so, as you all know, legislative session is coming quickly. So we adopted that in December. And then we granted permission to publish a COMAR for specific therapists in schools. We had quite a few opinions and orders. Those are now public. Happy to answer any questions related to December before I give us a little preview of what's to come in January.
Hannah, good morning. I have a question for you. It's Ebony. I don't know if you can see me, but hopefully you can hear me. You mentioned in the attendance task force that a range of, I guess, entities came together. Are those entities mentioned in some of the documentation, just to have a sense, pardon me, of like when we share it, that we can say more about the entities that came together on that task force, as well as, yes, that's the one I had a question about. Thank you.
Yes, I know I have seen it. I will look it up and I can drop it in the chat.
Okay.
I believe that there is a
Usually there's a
of
list,
who
right?
is
I
on
couldn't
it.
find it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll look it up after this, and I can either drop it in the chat or share it with Kelly and make sure that it gets out to you all.
Okay. Thanks so much.
All right, anyone else?
Okay,
Oh,
hearing
wait, I
nobody,
believe,
I will
Debbie,
do.
I'm sorry, I think Debbie Gartland had a question.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, this is before I forget. You'll follow up with a written report after it's been approved of today's report from you?
Yes, I'm thinking, did we send the summary of actions from December to you all? Do you all have that?
We don't have December.
Okay, I will send that. That is my fault. That I'm gonna blame the holidays, but I've also failed to do it a couple of times now, so I don't know how strong that excuse is for me. But yes, I will get that to you all right after this.
Thanks. I mean, you just provide so much information each month. It's great to have it in writing too. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, of course. And apologies for that. I dropped the ball. Okay, I will just preview some of what's coming in January. A lot of this is still slightly subject to change. Agenda mapping is fun. So we are adopting the COMAR for the regulations around PE. We are also adopting the Pathways to Teacher Licensure COMAR. Those are both going to be likely on consent, just because those have come through ed policy multiple times and then come through the full board multiple times. So usually when we get to permission to adopt, we'll put those on consent, but just flagging that those are going to be voted for adoption. We are also going to get an overview of the cohort graduation rate data. We are really excited that this data is coming out a lot sooner than we are used to, or that has been done previously. So that's a big win for the department, and we are excited to see what that data shows. We are also, in the spirit of kind of the kickoff of the legislative session, going to provide an update and kind of overview of the Academic Excellence Program, which is kind of the math and literacy statewide coaching model that was authorized last session, and now we are coming back and asking for some funding for that. So we'll provide a little overview of that. Our big policy is going to be the adolescent literacy policy that is coming for permission to publish. So that will be for grades 4 through 12, and we're just really excited. We know that has been. We know that teachers particularly are seeing, as they get into secondary school, what kind of support they need for students that may have some more foundational literacy issues. So we're excited to bring that forward. In more kind of data world, we are bringing our kindergarten readiness data. So we will see the first year that our new KRA assessment has been in the field. We are going to get a presentation of the data there. We will I believe this will be, I'm trying to think the time. I believe this will be a public session. We're going to get a preview of or an overview of the governor's FY27 budget. I believe that he will have publicly released it by the date of our board meeting. So we will get an overview of what that means for MSDE and state education at the January meeting. We are also bringing for permission to republish a COMAR section related to appeals to the state board. So this is, some of you may remember, this came to the board back in the summer, I believe, of 2025, but we pulled it, and so we are bringing it back for permission to republish, and this is particularly around local board removal, appeals related to local board removal cases. We are also going to get an overview of the blueprint training that is required for superintendents and local board members. That's something that the board hasn't gotten a presentation on in a really long time, if ever. So we're excited to kind of just level set for them what local superintendents and local board members are expected to participate in, and what kind of training they receive from the blueprint related to the blueprint. And then last two is AIB. As many of you may know, AIB does progress monitoring conferences with all LEAs. And so we're going to actually bring kind of the takeaways and top lines from those conferences to our board, just to help kind of bring some sunshine into what those conferences have entailed and what came of them. And then, of course, what MSDE's plan is to kind of support those districts and lean in on some of those takeaways. And then lastly, we are putting for permission to adopt the assessments for paraprofessionals working in Title I schools. So as I said, permission to adopt usually goes on the consent calendar, but because this is slightly new and the board has not done something related to paraprofessionals in Title I schools specifically, we're going to keep this as just a brief presentation at the end, just to ensure that board members are comfortable with the context and background there. So that is all for January. I know I have a couple of to-dos. I will send around the summary of actions as well as the makeup of the statewide attendance task force. But that is all for January, and I'm open to any questions.
Hi, Hannah again. It's Ebony again. Okay. A question for you. Could you say a little bit more about the permission to adopt for the paraprofessionals working in Title I schools? Is it around any profession? What part of that is the board seeking permission to adopt? Is it the experiences they must have? Is it some more about the context? I missed that when I was typing vigorously, so if you don't mind saying that again, thank you. Oh, one other thing after you answer that. When you send the summary of actions for the adopted 2026 legislative platform, if you could make that detailed, that would really help this board, since we rely very much on your board to push forward issues of interest.
Yes, of course. I'm happy to send that. The legislative platform summary of actions and the attendance makeup. On the paraprofessionals in Title I schools, Kelly will be able to act. I haven't seen it, but we are just approving specific assessments that are required for paraprofessionals in Title I schools. And I believe the vision is we recently, who knows when, it seems recent, we approved kind of a suite of a document that includes all the assessments required for educators And so I believe the vision is to add in this so that, add in the assessments here. But it's just the assessment piece. But I don't know if Kelly, if that's
It seemed to kind of
totally-
lean into this board's purview. That's one reason I was also of interest. So Kelly, if you don't mind. And then Karen also has a question.
Sure, I can give you a preview because I happen to be presenting that next month. So since prior to 2003, with No Child Left Behind, paraprofessionals working in Title I schools have had to meet certain qualifications to work in those schools. And that is through federal legislation, through ESSA. And that remains today. And so for many, many, many years, we have used the ETS Para-Pro assessment for that purpose. And it's one option. They can have an associate's degree, they can have an equivalent number of credits, or they can take this assessment in order to hold those positions. And that Para-Pro assessment has been regenerated. So it's coming off the market. And as we do for licensure assessments, we are asking the board to adopt the regenerated version, as well as some other national assessments that are now on the market for paraprofessionals. And we are carving out a policy for the first time, because with this particular board administration, they have gotten into the habit of creating formal policies, putting them on their website, so it's very transparent. So we will have a brand new policy. It will be different than the educator licensure policy, and it will be very brief and solely be about the assessment the assessments, hopefully, that are available to our paraprofessionals in Title I schools.
Thank you. And Karen has a question.
Thank you. Number of things there for boards of ed. And I'm sorry that no one from MABE can make it on the 27th to the state board meeting, because we have a legislative day that very day. But a couple of things. Could you explain with the appeals to the state board about local boards removal? I know that there's some potential legislation. They're looking for bipartisan legislation to just both superintendent removal and board member removal, to move the timeline, not disrupt the system or the mechanism, but just to up the timeline, because it can cripple a board when it takes over a year to remove a member or a superintendent. So anyway, does this have anything to do with that? I should be more familiar, but I can't say that I am right off, Anna.
So this one is slightly different. This one is about interim relief for if a local board member if there's been a petition for a local board member to be removed, and then we are adding in a new section that works with OAH specifically about interim relief. And so there, we've kind of put in a process for if the petitioner feels like there's a certain amount, there is kind of irreparable harm. I'm not sure the legalese there, so don't quote me on that. But like, if there is a certain amount of harm that would entail to the school system from the continued service of a local board member, then the petitioner can apply for interim relief. And that is kind of a dual OAH state board jurisdiction there, just because, you know, it deals with personnel, and OAH is the body there. So it was promulgated, I believe, in the summer, but we just pulled it and we're putting it back out.
Thank you. And I see, I'm looking at the Maryland Register now, and I see that the one on regulations for meetings, open meetings, public comment, that is going to be heard, is now out for public comment, and will be voted on at the February meeting. That's what it's saying here at the Maryland Register. So we'll be looking for that one as well. Thank you so much.
Of course.
All right, anyone else? All right, Hannah, thank you so much, as usual, for an excellent update. We appreciate all of your work in this area. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, so the next item on the agenda actually is one that we're going to wait for a little bit later on. So that's the teacher workforce update, which Kelly, you're working on, but you'll have that ready at a later date, correct?
So apologies, that was actually a carryover from last month's presentation, but it gives me the opportunity to let you know that a full supply and demand presentation is going to the state board in February, so I anticipate bringing it to you in March.
Okay, all right, so that would be in March. I'm just going to make sure I take a note of that. All right, and a lot of us will be watching that presentation as well and waiting for it to come to us. All right, thank you for all your work on that. All right, so that takes us, now we're running a bit ahead, but it takes us to the Code of Maryland Regulation 13.120505, Supervisor of Instruction, Assistant Principal. And you'll see you have a transmittal memo of that, and then you also have the COMAR itself. So I'll give you a second to pull that up or find the paper copy that was given to you. All right, so you're looking for Supervisor of Instruction, Assistant Principal, and Principal with permission to publish. And Kelly, you want to walk us through that?
Actually,
Wait,
I am
no.
going to invite Ms. Sophia Fitzpatrick to the table to walk you through that.
All right, wonderful. Oh, I see that you are on the schedule, pardon me.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, so this morning, as Darren let you all know, there are 3 separate regulations that we are bringing to you for permission to publish. So the 13A120505 for Supervisors of Instruction, Assistant Principals, and Principals, 0506 for Library Media Administrator, and then 0510 for Supervisor of Special Education. And these amendments are coming to ensure that language is aligned to the new administrator endorsement area for Supervisors of Instruction, Assistant Principals, and Principals. And so you have the memos with you, and if you want to take a look at the context that is in that memo, but we're going to start with 05, Supervisors of Instruction, Assistant Principals, and Principals. And so I'll provide a little bit more context. That regulation went into effect in September 2025, so many of you actually were on that work group, and so we have begun issuing that new endorsement. But we realized that it was not the intention of the regulation to prevent individuals who hold Administrator 1 and 2 to require them to meet the requirements of the new regulation. So we have to make some amendments. And so with that, with the new endorsement, there was an elimination of the 2-tier structure. So Administrator 1 and Administrator 2 are now historic areas. Unfortunately, the general provisions of our regulations do not permit licensure personnel to issue historic areas. But with these amendments, individuals that hold Administrator 1 and 2 areas will be able to continue to carry those areas, renew those areas, and also reinstate them if they complete the requirements, which is the 90 professional development points. I apologize. I'm still kind of getting over being sick. So we are going to look at those regulations first. So if you look at 05, we are looking down at the highlighted section. Those are the amendments, and that is section C, Administrator 1 and 2 endorsements. So I'm going to go through each of the subsections, and I'll pause to see if you have any questions. So the Administrator 1 and 2 endorsements are now historic. The Administrator 1 endorsement qualifies an individual, A, to serve as an assistant principal and supervisor of instruction, and B, may continue to hold that endorsement if the requirements for renewal, reinstatement, or both are met. So again, individuals who hold the Administrator 1 area will be able to stay and work in those positions. In addition, renew those areas on an active license and reinstate them if needed. We no longer issue those areas, but with the amendments, we will allow them to reinstate. I'll pause. Okay, I'm going to keep going. The administrator to... Oh.
Hold on one second.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Let me think through my question, because my question is very much about alum of programs. So I'm going to hold my question.
Okay.
Okay.
The administrator to endorsement. So A, this endorsement qualifies an individual to serve as a principal, and B, may continue to hold that endorsement if the requirements for renewal, reinstatement, or both are met. So same language, individuals who hold the Administrator 2 area will also be able to renew it on an active license and reinstate with 90 professional development points and serve in positions as principals. And I'll be a little bit more specific because I can see the wheels kind of turning in your head. Individuals who complete a Maryland-approved program, those individuals are not really impacted by the new endorsement because that is still a pathway under the new regulations. What was causing some difficulty, first and foremost, for individuals who wanted to reinstate and hold at those areas because the regulations say we cannot reinstate historic areas. Again, it was not the intention to tell someone who has already completed the requirements, has experience, and we have individuals who may move back to the state, want to work in Maryland, and we want them to come back. So we don't want them to have to meet the new requirements under the supervisors of instructions, assistant principals, and principals because they previously met a pathway. So they will be able to reinstate the Administrator 1 or 2 areas with the amendments. In addition, individuals who completed a route under the former regulations with transcript analysis, those individuals, there are new requirements with the new endorsement. So if you look, we added the culturally responsive leadership. That was not in the former regulation, as well as most of the programs in Maryland have the 240 hours, but the 240 hours of the clinical experience is specific as well, which was not in the former regulation. So we want to ensure that those individuals who hold those areas do not have to return, reinstate, and meet a new pathway because they did in the past. Kelly, do you have anything else you want to add?
I do. So just to make sure everyone's clear on why we're doing this. So another part of the regulations in Chapter 1, General Provisions, explicitly says you cannot reinstate a historical endorsement. So unless we carve this out, we are setting up a situation where those individuals who have successfully held the Administrator 1 or 2 endorsement for years in some cases, let it expire, whether inadvertently or purposefully, and they would no longer be able to reinstate that. We would hold them to the new requirements, which may or may not affect them depending on their pathway that they originally had. Now, that's usually not an issue when we completely revamp something and say, like, this has to be this way moving forward. But I don't think that was ever the intention with this particular regulation. So, this is a cleanup so that does not happen.
Thank you. I think I'm ready for my question. Is that okay?
Okay,
And Dr.
yep.
Woodward has a question. So I know that it was not the intent to impact existing admin 1 or 2 license holders, and the work of the work group is very much appreciated. The questions coming to many of the IHEs is very much about the helpful language that Dr. Keys and his team sent out, which included how we might want to reach out to alum of programs, because some of the names, for example, if you search for IHE programs, you're more than likely going to still see a program called Admin 1 because they're approved under the last, under the previous sort of nomenclature, right? And so with that in mind, it kind of it gives the appearance that there are 2 systems when that is not the intent. Does it make sense what I'm saying? So like when alum reach out to us, they're like, oh, there have been many inquiries about people who are already in a program, wondering if they need to change. No, you're already in a Maryland Approved program, right? But also alumna programs like, okay, so should our map stamp change? And I believe it is changing. And so that is also the work that has reached IHEs, is because that transcript stamp will be changing. And program names need to change because program websites will say, come on to the University of wherever and get your Admin 1. So I just wanted to sort of name that, understanding the intent, appreciating the work and the opportunity for innovation, the cleanup of the language, and just sort of sharing the landscape of what's happening so that we can work together to help solve and help support our Maryland educators and leaders. So I hope that was helpful. Yes. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no, I just want to, absolutely, it can be confusing during these transitions. I do believe a memorandum went out to all programs that have administrator programs talking about that stamp of completion, and certainly continue to work. All of our IHEs should continue to work with our Office of Program Approval if they need any help with language or communication with their current students or their alumni. We're happy to partner in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I also want to add that, with new regulations, again, this just went into effect in September. So we are working with our licensure partners and our LEAs. We're making sure the information that is going out is correct because we became aware that, there was a little bit of confusion, like Kelly was saying. And then also we're working with our supervisors of our content areas as well, because many of them hold administrator areas. So I've been going out into the field, going to those content meetings and ensuring that they are aware of these changes. And so I will work with individuals one-on-one to ensure that they understand it is an option for those individuals if they would like to add the new endorsement. And I'm more than happy to work with anyone if they don't understand why they may not be able to because they came in through transcript analysis, et cetera. So that is the work that our team has to do, and we are happy to do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Nikki?
I saw Ms. Stanton. Oh, sorry.
Oops,
Yes,
there we
so-
go. Oh, go ahead.
All right, Nikki, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I understand within context why you're saying that you would want someone not to have to go through the new process for reinstatement. I just have a lot of pause around the length of time that it had been. I'm not sure I would feel comfortable with someone who left the field for 10 years in today's environment with the new, the ways, with the cultural experiences, with this the increased special education, all what instruction looks like post-COVID, that they would be able to just come in and say, I had it before, I'm ready, let's go. And so is there not going, I don't know, was there conversation around there being some of a time limit and circumstances that led someone to not reinstate? I can see if they left and they went somewhere else, but if they left the field, became a consultant, worked on the Hill for 15 years, and then they come back as a parent, as an educator, I'm not sure that contemplates the same as someone having moved out of the state, keeping the position and then coming back.
And we understand that, and licensure is extremely nuanced. So I want to say that, like, every person that comes to us, their circumstances are different. Most of the time when we see people return to this state, it is because they are coming from out of state. And individuals who are reinstating may have gone back into the classroom for reasons. So I just want to put that out there. With that being said, are there circumstances where we are allowing these people to kind of get or show us that they are ready to enter into these roles? The answer is yes, it's in the regulations. Those individuals to reinstate have to still do the 90 professional development points. So although we're saying you're not meeting these new pathways per se, because we have like the culturally responsive leadership in there, they still have to do those 4 required areas in addition to those 2 extra areas for administrators and show proof of coursework and professional development and learning experiences before we will reinstate that license. So they are just not coming back and saying, I'm ready. They have to do the work.
Okay, so Nikki asked half my question. So does that mean that those folks would be able to continue with the system that exists or existed as of, what was it, August of last year? Or
Well,
is there some like...
They're reinstating the administrator 1 or 2 area, but they are meeting the requirements for under the new regulations, so the 90 PDPs. So they have to meet the 4 areas, which are culturally responsive instruction and differentiation, special education or instructing differentiated instruction, bilingual education, and then the 4th one, Curly, help me out, because now is content and pedagogy. And then for administrators, it's teacher retention, and fostering teacher leadership. So those are the 2 extra areas for administrators. So they will still meet those requirements that are under the current regulations, but reinstating the former areas since we're going to add these amendments, or we're asking permission to.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Welcome.
I just wanted to circle back and share that with those opportunities, when IHEs are in the process of changing their names, and the applicants for reinstatement are wondering about whether an IHE, or whether they can take some of the courses at an IHE, and the IHE still has the old name and they're coming under a new one. Does that make sense? We just still have some work to do around, just like in anything, right? When we change these, so I just wanted to again just name that, because it does appear as if there are 2 systems when there really isn't. We're really trying to protect, right, the work that has already happened in a meaningful way, as well as the rigor that has come from this. But I just want to. It's quite complicated on the back end, and as it is also for you. But I just wanted to just share that as I think about all the emails that we get. But thank you.
Thank you. And we understand, and we will continue to work together. So if you have questions, if students have questions, please send them our way. Any other questions before we move on to 13A120506 for library media administrator?
Well, may I ask, we have a permission to publish for each one of these, so we might want to stop and do the permission to publish before we move on to the next one. But I want to make sure we've explored this entirely, and I think we have. Is there anybody else who had a question or a comment? And Kelly, I would echo what you said. I think anybody who was working on the work groups, we did not want to preclude the work that someone else had done, but we still wanted to hold up high standards as we went forward. So this is a good cleanup. Writing COMAR is extremely difficult. And that is one lesson I have learned so many times, where if you just leave one little piece out, or there's a section of a sentence, it has such huge effects. And that's why we appreciate the deliberative work and all the comments that we get and so forth, because we do work hard to get it right. So this is one more example of that. So anyway, my apologies to anybody who's been stressed by this, but we're working to get it right. So, all right. And one more time, any other questions, comments regarding this? And thank you for that excellent presentation and analysis historically of how we got here, because that helps.
Thank you, Darren.
All right. So seeing no other comment, I will entertain a motion for permission to publish COMAR 13A120505, Supervisors of Instruction, Assistant Principals, and Principals.
This is Jenny Bischoff, so moved.
All right, so moved by Jenny Bischoff. I'd need a second.
Dr. Taylor seconds.
All right, seconded by Dr. Taylor. Again, any other future discussion, further discussion? All right, and Sean, I can do this just by a voice vote, or we don't need to go person by person since so many are online? No, you can do a voice, show of hands or voice. All right, so all of those in favor for permission to publish 13A120505 indicate by either saying aye or doing a show of hands.
Aye.
All right, are there any opposed? All right, do we have anybody who abstains? All right, then we have permission to publish. All right, now walk us through the next one.
Okay, so we are going to actually go out of order of the agenda. I'm going to go in order of the regulations. So 13A120506, which is library and media administrator. And so if you take a look at the regulation, we are actually going down to section B, which lists the education and experience requirements for the library and media administrator. And so it says the applicant shall meet the requirements for licensure as a library media specialist. They must have a master's degree from an institution of higher education, have 3 years of effective library media program experience, for complete 3 semester hours or state-approved CPD credits in special education coursework, and 5, this is where the amendment comes in to reflect the amendment in 05 that we just asked permission to publish for. So previously, it said that the library media administrator must complete one of the options listed under Regulation 5 of this chapter that would lead to licensure as an Administrator 1. So the amended language will say, meet the requirements for licensure as an Administrator 1 or Supervisor of Instruction, Assistant Principals, and Principals under Regulation 5 of this chapter, since we, again, are allowing individuals to continue to carry the Administrator 1 area on an active license if they met a route under the former regulations.
I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if you know this offhand, but I was working with some library media specialists when we were discussing the changes to the specialists and we were discussing special education course. The one difference between the administrator language and the specialist language is this requirement, it seems. Is that right? Does anybody else know that offhand? It seems like this is the one difference from the library media specialist versus the library media administrator is this particular component where the administrator is usually the supervisor for a district in most cases, I would imagine. And it seems like this is the one difference between the specialists. Is that right?
I don't know.
Okay.
We'd have to pull out the regulation and take a
Okay,
look.
all right.
Yeah,
Which we can, but-
there are different pathways for each of the specialists. I don't know them like off the top of my head, but I can make sure I send them out to you. But yes,
Okay.
they would have to meet the requirements for licensure as that specialist, have the experience, and then also meet the
Have
requirements.
the
as-
addition. Yes, I see okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I kind of know it just from, but thank you. You don't have to dig it out. Thank you.
This is referencing only the historic endorsement area.
Yeah, so now that we've adopted the other one, we have to make sure that all of the other regulations point to the new language. That's right.
So this is producing alignment. Yep, okay. All right, any other questions or comments regarding this one? All right, then I will entertain a motion to adoct COMAR 13A 120506, Library Media Administrator, for permission to publish.
Darren, Dr. Taylor moves to adopt.
All right, thank you, Dr. Taylor. A second, please.
Second, Debbie Gartland.
All right, seconded by Debbie Gartland. Any other discussion on this? All right, all those in favor of publishing COMAR 13A 120506, the Library Media Administrator, please signify by a show of hands. All right, is there anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we have permission to publish Library Media Administrator. All right, one more, whenever you're ready.
Okay, last one. So we are now turning to 13A 120510, which is Supervisor of Special Education. And so this particular regulation is split into two separate sections. So A, the principal of a public separate school. So this addresses individuals who serve as principals in our special ed schools. And then B, for our supervisors of special education. And so again, the amendments here are just for alignment to the 05 language. So we're going to take a look at section A, principal public separate school. The requirements for licensure as a principal in a public separate school are that the applicant shall meet the requirements for licensure in special education and meet the requirements for licensure as an administrator, 2, as a principal, or this is the added language, or supervisor of instruction, assistant principals, and principals under Regulation 5 of this chapter. I'll pause. Can I keep going? Yes? Okay. And then Section B, for supervisors of special education. The requirements for licensure as a supervisor of special education are that the applicant shall meet the requirements for licensure in special education and meet the requirements for licensure as an administrator, 1, or supervisor of instruction, assistant principals, and principals under Regulation 05 of this chapter. So again, producing alignment to the current language, and those individuals that serve as supervisors must hold an administrator 1 area, or the new endorsement.
All right, I'll open it up for questions or comments. All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to.
Sorry, Darren, my hand's up. I know it's
Oh, I'm
Friday.
sorry, I didn't see you, Nikki. My
It's
apologies.
okay. No apologies needed. I just would like a little bit of clarification on part C. For instance, and I guess just for clarity purposes, for instance, if a person is responsible to support, let's say, physical disability, DHOH, instruction and professional development, and it just happens to be that they have all these specific areas, is that saying they don't need to meet the requirements of special education, or is that, I guess I'm not clear on what the special provision meaning under if they are assigned to multiple areas?
That is what it means, and this language is a carryover. So the supervisor of special education, excuse me, licensure requirements are when it's the sole assignment. So if they are, if they have responsibilities that are related to special education, but also outside of special education, this regulation says that they have to meet the requirements for that supervisor of instruction, assistant principal, and principal licensure area, but they do not have to meet the requirements of the supervisor of special education area. That is how it reads.
That was my thinking. So I guess the question then, is there an expectation that an LEA would have someone's, I guess, specific under that person to ensure? I just I'm going to be frank and honest about it. In my engagement with LEAs, special education is the #1 crippling area for most districts. And they are inundated with, litigations, compliance issues. And I would think that if, regardless if you have multiple pathways or areas that you're supporting, somebody has to have a strong sense and understanding in the area and field of special education. So that I know that's a carryover, but that as a special educator, that concerns me, and especially the communications. I think the state board, as well as we, receive almost monthly concerns elevated around special education. And so I just put my concern out there. That's a little concerning for me.
What do we want to, any other comments around that? That is concerning to me too.
Yeah, I would like to. So completely understand the concern, and definitely within this board's purview to want to study this further and bring together experts from the community to make recommendations. I would caution you to make amendments related to this piece without consulting those experts, or we're probably not going to get through public comment. My suggestion to you would be to move forward with this sole amendment that just realigns the language, and at the same time, Ms. Fitzpatrick and her team can set up a work group to discuss. It's actually really good timing because the special education work group for the state is about to release their final report, I believe, if they haven't already. So this is a good time to collaborate with them, and this is one of the pieces that we can dig into whether or not it remains appropriate.
Much appreciated, Kelly.
Right, and I would echo, that has happened quite a few times on the board, where we go to a position where we kind of need to produce some clarity. But remember, we're not adopting it, we're simply voting to publish, and oftentimes we can get some solutions from a number of groups who give us feedback, and that helps us move forward. So it's sort of, in many ways, I see this as a step to sort of getting it right. As opposed to actually adopting, which of course we're not doing here. Now, granted, that being said, I'm also cautious about publishing something where we're not 100% sure, because usually when you publish, you try and make sure you've got it right before you send it out. But this is kind of a different situation, I think. So, Kelly, I agree. I personally agree with what you were suggesting, but I leave it open to the pleasure of the board. All right, any other questions or comments?
So can we make sure that the minutes reflect that our plans are to collaborate with the special education work group and look into opportunities for what this means more deeply?
Absolutely. We will.
Yeah, I think the minutes should be, yes. Okay. That if we do agree to publish, the board also recommended strongly that moving forward we do this as we gain public opinion. And expert opinion, of course, as well, because that'll come in as well. All right. Good question. All right, anything else? Oh, go right ahead. All right, anybody else? I'm making sure I'm looking online and in the room as well. All right, so anything else? Okay, every now and then a mic accidentally comes on, and we want to make sure we don't miss anybody. All right, so with that in mind, with the previous discussion in mind, I will now entertain a motion to publish COMAR 13A 120510, Supervisor of Special Education.
Aaron Yoho, I will move that.
All right, to move forward, we would need a second.
Jenny Bischoff, I'll second.
All right, we have a second. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor of publication, please signify by raising your hand. All right, is there anyone opposed to publication? And do we have any abstentions? All right, then, we have published COMAR 13A 120510, Supervisor of Special Education. All right, thank you so much, Ms. Fitzpatrick. I appreciate you walking us through all of that. And thank you for the work everybody's done on bringing that to us.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
Sure. All right, we are running pretty far ahead of schedule right now. Addison Smith is the next to give us a reading instruction assessment, but they're not here, correct?
She unfortunately is under the weather, so I will be filling in for her.
All right, so I'll tell you what, while I love being ahead of schedule, I also would appreciate a break. So how about we take about a 15-minute break, and then we'll reconvene. reading assessment passing rates. And it's my understanding Addison Smith was not feeling well, so want to wish her get well soon wishes, and thank Kelly for coming in and presenting in her place.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Okay, so this stems from a request that we received during the last board meeting, and the board had asked MSDE to pull specifically the reading assessment passing rates. We do, as a reminder, just as for the license requirement reminder, there are a couple reasons why an individual may be taking these assessments. The first is, since 2018, we have required an assessment, an approved reading instruction assessment for any individual who is seeking initial licensure, professional licensure in the areas of early childhood education, elementary education, special education, or ESOL. So that has been a requirement for quite some time, and then in 2021, it was actually legislated in statute that that the reading instruction assessment would be a requirement. And we had already been doing it. The second reason that an individual may take this is from the regulations that we recently promulgated in 2024, and it has to do with renewal. So for those individuals who have held a professional license in those same areas for potentially quite some time, we wanted to make sure that they were also demonstrating proficiency, but only if they were assigned actively to teach one of those areas. So for instance, if you have, I'll take myself. So I have a special education endorsement, but I also have a psychology endorsement. If I were assigned to or to teach a psychology course at the high school level, I would not be required at that renewal to demonstrate proficiency. Now, for that second piece for renewal, there's a couple options for demonstrating proficiency. The assessment is one. There's also a coursework option, and there are several courses that MSDE has identified for this purpose. And you can find all that on our website. So that's just a reminder of why we have this assessment in place. So just a couple notes before we take a look at the data. So when we run data from both ETS and Pearson Evaluation Services, it's going to include all attending institutions in the state of Maryland, and that means that it could be an institution of higher education that offers a teacher preparation program, and it may not be. So, for instance, if an individual is currently enrolled in some coursework at the community college, let's say CCBC, and it just so happens to coincide with when they take the assessment for renewal purposes, they may very well not understand and select CCBC as their institution of higher education, and that score report is going to be tied to that institution. So just want to put that out there. Secondly, ETS reporting breaks down race and ethnicity far more in the weeds than the federal guidelines and the state guidelines. So because of that, we have, you're going to see on the next slide that there's an unknown category. We did not attempt to provide all of those categories to you. It's not something we've ever presented in any other forum, so we didn't choose to start now. And then finally, we did not bring you pass rates for the Foundations of Reading Assessment, which is the Pearson Evaluation Services product, because there simply are not enough test takers who we have that data for at this point in time, which makes sense because we recently adopted the use of this assessment, and all of our teacher preparation programs had long since been aligning their coursework with the ETS product. So you're only going to see one set of data today, and that is for the Praxis Teaching Reading Elementary Assessment. This is a 5-year total of data, and it is broken down by race, ethnicity, as requested. And as we usually share, there's a first-time passing rate, so the very first time a test taker attempts the assessment. And then there's a best score passing rate, and that could be, a second attempt, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth attempt. It's all combined. So if an individual has taken the assessment more than one time, they're going to have a best score and a first time, whereas some individuals will simply have a first time passing rate because they've either passed it on their first attempt or they have not attempted to pass it again if they did not successfully pass the assessment. And you can see the numbers there. An asterisk, by the way, means that we've suppressed it because there are too few test takers for us to share that data. So the only kind of takeaway that I'll throw out there, a couple of them. One, for those of you who were here the last time we shared this data, we also saw the trend that individuals who take the test multiple times tend to do better. So we do see a jump in the pass rate between first time and best score. And we also saw at that time that our Black or African American test takers did struggle the most with this assessment, and followed by two or more races and our Hispanic test takers.
All right, go ahead, Nikki.
I just was what's the other category? Because it seems pretty complete. Would that where MENA may fall, or I just, if you had any clarity around
Sure.
other?
Yeah, so other is an option for the test taker to select. Whereas the unknown is what I was discussing earlier about those other race categories that we don't usually report on. We've combined them in unknown, but the other was selected by the test taker.
I just wanted to add ETS to sort of extend Kelly's answer. ETS does collect more detailed race data, so I think that sort of answers your question, Dr. Woodward, on where those data are. It's under unknown. I was wondering too, is it other or unknown? So yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, anybody else with a question, comment? I'm assuming the candidate would be taking this practice. Would this be at the end of their prep program most of the time, or do we know?
I'll turn to my IHE EPP colleagues to ask them when during the program they tend to see their candidates sit for this assessment.
Dr. Gartland?
So our students at Towson finish their fourth required reading class, the 12 part of the 12 credits in the fall. So I always say to them, you've got 6 weeks. The information is fresh in your head. Take the reading in the January break. For all the students that I've had, they're doing LED and special ed. So they have other LED and special ed praxis exams to take, plus the obviously the Ed TPA. So that's when we do it, typically after the 12 credits have been completed while the information is fresh at Towson.
Same thing at Bowie. We suggest that they take it after they finish the reading courses that they have to take, but of course, it's their decision. And many of them wait and say, no, I want to take all 3 at one time. And so, but we do suggest that they take it as soon as they finish their reading courses, the 4 reading courses that they can, because as Debbie said, it's fresh in their mind and they're more likely to be successful at that time. But of course, it's their decision.
It's similar for the University of Maryland College Park, pardon me, similar to Towson with the elementary special education. We have the early childhood special education, and so those students are taking multiple tests, and we ask that they take it toward the end in the undergraduate program. We don't have well, our spring semester actually starts late January, so we have a winter quarter, but they're also taking classes during that time. So in the undergraduate sequence, we ask that in the one-year program, however, there's still a pending reading class, and so we try to time that in a meaningful way because they're also doing the EdTPA. So, yes.
Anyone else? I'm going to ask a question that I truly don't know the answer to, but I throw it out more in sort of a historical context. As a board, obviously, we work with the state board, and sometimes they have purview that we do not. But in looking at some of the assessments that we give, every now and then there's a question as to, well, how valid is that assessment? And I realize that's a thorny question to ask, but there are times where we've made adjustments in COMAR because we believe certain assessments are not all that valid. It's been criticized by other states and so forth. So I guess I have two questions, which we may want to answer out loud or we may just want to think about. But I guess in looking at something like this, the two questions that come to mind is, how many states actually use this as a test and see it as valid? And is there a general feeling as though this is a valid instrument in measuring proficiency at reading education? So in other words, how valid is it and how much is it used by other states? Because before we can look at, well, 71%, is that to be concerned? We think about the validity of the test that's being given.
I can comment, but let me see if somebody else has a, okay.
Go ahead, Ebony.
Okay, so the general thought is that there are too many tests, not necessarily the validity of one test, but the series of tests, the number of tests. And I just gave the example of an early childhood special education student, like, you know, taking 4 and 5 tests when it's already expensive, you know, tuition, and then you have these other tests. It just makes it hard for us to recruit into the profession. In terms of the validity of the test, I'll have to look at what some of the latest data show, but I don't hear too many concerns about validity, probably because the focus is more on can we reduce, and then the other sentiment is, you know, the state was in a position to try to make a decision on what's going to happen with like secondary, and so the tree I think was a place filler for that. And so as a reading specialist, I don't personally find that to be the best test, but there's also not a test out there either for secondary. So we didn't get into that today, but I just wanted to mention that, and it might be helpful because, you know, the adolescent policy is coming out and it will probably just impact adolescent literacy in general. So just wanted to add that, those layers, and if I missed anything, I'd be happy to route it to someone else. Thank you.
Also, Ebony, one of the things that I agree with you, but it's the stress on the student when they have to take so many tests that poses a problem. Because these tests, and I know at Bowie, I'm not sure if the other institutions in the state of Maryland, the IHEs, require them passing in order to get out to graduate from the program. And
Yes.
That's an added stress.
It is a graduation requirement for sure.
Yes.
Oh, not at Towson? Okay. Not everywhere. So that seems to vary across IHUs in the state. And so I can imagine that the stress would then increase because you cannot graduate without passing, or you at least, yeah, so.
Well, I can only echo on the other side, not related to this, but the amount of tests being given, we're in the middle of testing season now, it's January. So in public schools, I don't know that we've ever done a comprehensive study to find out just how many tests every kid has to take from 9th grade to 12th grade, including benchmark assessments, county assessments, statewide assessments, and everything else you'd need to get into college and so forth. So it's, I can tell you every day you start the announcements with, take your tests seriously. Well, it's hard when you've got that many tests. Test fatigue is real. So I don't know, I'm just saying, echoing, oh yeah, I think there's a number of teachers that could see that in multiple areas.
In
as
addition
well.
to the EdTPA.
Yeah, exactly.
And I
Which-
wanted to add a nuance. Sorry, I was thinking about my response there. What can happen is you can graduate with a non-teaching option, but you would not have wanted to go to school for 4 years to be, for example, in elementary education, but then not have that opportunity to have that option on your transcript. So that's what's happening in the field. Thanks for asking.
Yes, I agree, Ebony. I agree.
Melissa has her hand up.
As a 5th grade teacher in one of the most tested grade levels, I definitely echo all those sentiments. But I was looking at the numbers, just because we have such a deficit of teachers. And so I know there's lots of reasons the numbers can change over time, but looking at that first score, passing the first time to best score passing, that's 700 candidates that we lost. And then even looking at like that 16% of not passing for the best score is another 700 candidates lost. So we're losing people that are interested in going into education, and this is just elementary. So I think that definitely we need to look into this some more.
I appreciate that, Melissa, and I think that was partially the genesis of my question. So I appreciate that a lot. Because if I look at this, and I'm just thinking as a regular classroom teacher, if I taught a unit and I gave an exam and my pass rate was 71%, I'd be concerned. Now, does that mean that translates into this exam? I don't know, because my question is, what's the validity of the instrument that we're using and what are the factors around it? But, listening to the numbers that you just cited, yeah, I think this is worth coming back to, because reading is the foundation of everything. So we want to make sure that, obviously, and I'm preaching to the choir, we want to make sure that our candidates are well schooled on the teaching of reading. And especially with the number of changes we've made just in the last couple of years in the COMAR that this board has passed. So making sure they have those skills are necessary. 71% is concerning. But then again, we go back to, we've had a lot of assessments where we're not quite sure what to make of it until we understand the validity of the assessment. So that's why I don't know, me personally, I would like to see more discussion about this, because this is so central to the foundation of most of the COMAR we've passed in teacher education, particularly in the elementary area. And we've got to be able to have we have to be able to make sure we understand that what we've done actually might be having an impact in the right direction, and we need legitimate data to tell us if that's working. So, I don't know, I just suggest, yes, we could continue discussion about it, and I open it up for more discussion now.
Dr. Gartland's hand is up.
Thanks. Yeah, I totally agree. We should continue talking, and I think that I and a few others who, so I appreciate these data, Kelly, so much. But the other thing is that what I was interested in after the state board said that the foundations would be allowed as an alternative to the praxis reading exam, I guess where so many of the students who had done well in the 4 courses, the 12 credits, some of those were the very ones who did take the praxis reading and didn't pass the first time. So what I was interested in is knowing, is there a higher pass rate for the foundations? So that's what, so I didn't realize that was just recently allowed. So I can see where Kelly had said that we have few data to report. So there's not really a good comparison, but I think it would be great for us to continually ask in another year, do we have enough data to make a comparison between the foundations and the praxis reading?
Anyone else? Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate that.
I just want to say that I agree with you on giving this a little bit more thought, insight, and reflection on, the tests, the number of tests, at least for a discussion, to look further at how our teachers are performing. And I think that, if I remember from Addison's presentation last year, that these data are from early childhood, TESOL, special education, and elementary candidates, because they all take the tree. We call it a tree, by the way. And that fact is why I mentioned what I said about it not being a good option for secondary educators. But when Addison returns, we could certainly ask more details around that.
And to that end, Kelly, I guess I'm just kind of wondering, is there anybody who at a future meeting could maybe speak to the exam, put it in a larger context, and just have something be informational that helps us dig a little deeper into this?
When you say into the exam, do you mean, I'm happy to ask ETS to come and talk about the exam itself.
Well, I'm thinking more, is there anybody well, I'm not quite sure what I'm thinking. I guess what I'm asking is, I would like more context information about the validity of the test, what other assessments might be showing about the test and so forth. Is there anybody?
I would suggest ETS come to the table, or Pearson Evaluation Services, depending on the assessment, and talk about the assessment.
Okay. Is there anybody at MSDE that works with this section of the test or with reading in specific that would speak to it?
No.
Okay. All right.
Darren, I have a question.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Because if you look at the passing rate at ETS, many of our students who take this test pass it according to ETS, but Maryland has the second highest pass rate for that test, Virginia being the first. So maybe it's, I don't know. Should we discuss why does Maryland have such a high pass rate of this test? When our students perform very well in the classroom, according to their mentor teachers, according to their university supervisor, and according to what they do in the classroom, but when they take the test, they don't pass.
Okay.
Kelly's hand
Kelly,
up.
yeah, and then we'll go to Karen.
So I think if we want to ask either testing vendor to come to the table and talk about the development of this test and the validity of these assessments, if there are concerns, specific concerns, I think we need to tell them ahead of time so that they know what to speak to. So, and I think we also need to recognize that they can only speak to the assessment. They can't speak to, for example, Debbie had shared that they used the 4 courses. They can't speak to alignment to Towson's 4 courses, or Bowie's coursework, or College Park's coursework, or the practicum that Bowie may have their candidates go through. So I think we need to be reasonable with what we're asking them to do. But if we have specific concerns about assessment development, or we just have questions about the validity, how the validity was established, those types of things, we should let them know what our questions are so that they can come prepared to answer them.
Oh, I would agree 100%.
Yeah.
And I'll be frank with you. I'm not quite sure I understand what our questions are right now, because
Right.
that's what I'm asking.
Right.
And how best to get to that information is more what I'm trying to fill out. Yeah, so I agree with you 100%.
Karen
Karen.
Tam was up.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that would be really interesting to hear what their thought process was, because you got me thinking. This goes back a while. As a teacher, it was always recommended to us from especially our local union, UNISERV, make sure you're not stuck in one pigeonhole, that you have a lot of different certifications. So I took that seriously, and under No Child Left Behind, you could take the praxis after having a number of years of successful teaching. And one of the ones I took was ESOL at the time, English for Speakers of Other Language. That's why I say it goes back a while. And that was much more of a speech-based assessment. Took me back to my University of Maryland undergrad degree, a speech course. And so that is not how now, ELS is, or multi-language learners are taught at all in the classroom, in the schools. And so I think maybe this gets to what you're talking about, Darren. So it would be interesting to hear what is their thought process, what are they laying out? But then I think you're talking about how does that match up to what they've been taught in the classroom, what they're going to be expected to teach in schools when they get a job. And I feel like sometimes that's a mismatch.
So is our goal to invite ETS? I'm asking because I know you said you're figuring out your question.
Yeah.
Is our goal to invite ETS to get a sense specifically around the tree of the process or the processes that they use to create the instrument in of itself, know a little bit more about who the test maybe is normed on, et cetera, so that we just have context around the tree? Is that kind of what you're saying? Because when I say I'm concerned about the number of tests, I just literally meant that because when you're in elementary, for example, you have to take the math praxis, the science, right, the social studies, like there's 4, and that's outside of the tree, right? So I was just talking about the number of tests in general. But I think that if this board has questions, and Kelly is made a suggestion around having the two, having both ETS and Pearson come, that could help us since we don't have those other data. So I'm just trying to see if that's the question that you were getting at, trying to be helpful.
All right, and just give me 1 second.
Okay. And Dr. Woodward's hand is up if you.
Okay. Well, one more quick question then to you, Kelly. Is our cut score for this test higher than what Praxis, and sorry to reveal my ignorance on this, I'm assuming Praxis recommends a cut score. Is ours higher than theirs? Am I understanding that right?
It's not, and it is the recommended score, but to be clear, Praxis does not set the recommended score. They have a multi-state standard setting panel. Usually it's two independent panels that set the score, and then they align, those two panels align. So I can, there are technical manuals for every single assessment that ETS publishes, and I'm happy to get you a copy of the TREE technical manual that talks about like what states were involved, what process they went through to set the score, what the score is, how many standard standard errors of measurement you should not go beyond. All of that good stuff is in a technical manual. Happy to provide that to you. With all that said, we did adopt the recommended score.
Okay, good. That clears that up. And I realize we have a couple more hands up, but just to go back to what you were asking, Ebony, my personal thought now, and I may change this after I hear more comments, I think it's a little premature right now to bring in the testing service. But what I do think would be good is that because this inspires a lot of discussion, that we might want to sort of, as the chair and vice chair, ask for you to send us what could be potential discussion points on this, and then we can get a clearer understanding of what we might want to bring up in the future, because there's multiple things that are being discussed here. And Kelly's right, you don't want to bring someone in unless you've got a clear understanding of what you'd like to ask them and what we'd like to know. And it sounds to me as though there's a lot of people around the table that have a lot of thoughts on this. So my thought is, and again, I want to hear from the other two people before we get too far into this, but my recommendation, if you're okay with it, Ebony, is for us to open up sort of a homework activity by which the members of the board who see this might want to email Ebony with some potential discussion points or things they'd like to know or things that we should be discussing in the future, and then we can figure out the best way to move forward. That's my thought.
That works for me, and the technical guide is helpful and publicly available. We use it to talk about the tree, and the technical guides for both of them could be a wonderful conversation for us, and I'll be happy to collect any questions to help us get a better sense of the test, the context of the test, and the development of the test, for sure.
All right, I really do appreciate that. And again, we can add to this after we get the next two comments. And I don't know whose hand was up first, but let's go with Ms. Handley.
Dr. Woodward was up first. Go ahead.
I apologize.
No problem. So, and I might be off, but the cut score for Maryland is, I believe, is it 156 and 159 for Virginia. I would be interested in seeing Virginia's layout of all their examinees. Would that be, I mean, I can do the research myself, but to me, I don't know if we can have an informed conversation around all the details of it if we're not comparing it to like state, like IGA, like program, IHG programs. And so I would be interested in just us looking at comparing our data to our neighbors' data as well, not just saying, hey, our cut score is 156 and this is where we're seeing the challenges based on doing some analysis across the area for race and ethnicity.
So the cut score is 159 for Maryland, and I'm not sure what it is for Virginia, but any publicly available data, I think we could certainly
I thought it was 159, but
receive. I think it's 159.
Yeah.
And so we could certainly have that conversation if the board is interested. We are interested in what the majority are interested in, or right. And so if that is of interest, we will certainly do that. So just to clarify, we're interested in also looking at Virginia's data and looking just to Dr. Taylor's question about sort of 1 and 2 and having that information, it sounds like.
Kelly?
So I'll need to have a conversation with ETS because I don't know if we're entitled to Virginia's data. I don't know if it's public.
Oh, yeah,
I know
I said
when
only public
when
data.
we request data, like national data, it is not provided to us by state, to my knowledge. Maybe there is a possibility. I do not know.
Thank you for that.
Okay, and again, that's why it's good to maybe send these suggestions to Ebony, because then we can kind of flesh out what's available, what's not, when we bring this back to the table again, and we have a little bit more of a clearer insight into this. All right, I don't know who was next, Debbie or?
I think
Ms.
Ms.
Hanley?
Hanley was
It was
next. then
Debbie.
Oh,
Okay, thank you all. Debbie, you've got the floor.
I just was wondering if it would be helpful for us to review what information the state board had to make the decision to include the foundations as an alternative to the praxis.
Sure, I'm happy to send a copy of the transmittal memo and documents that were provided to the state board. It was sometime in 2024 or 5.
oh, I thought it was December 23. I got that wrong. Maybe it was 24.
I don't recall.
Okay.
Yeah, and also maybe the link to the meeting, so some of us can go back and listen to that discussion that they might have had.
Sure, and I presented it, so I'm happy to share with you that there was support for making it as flexible as possible for test takers, knowing that we are an import state and we import between 50 and 60% of our teacher workforce, and many states do use the Pearson Evaluation Services Foundations of Reading Assessment. So doesn't feel right telling someone coming from, let's say, whatever state who's passed that assessment, you're going to have to sit for another assessment. You have to sit for the ETS version. So there was support. I don't recall, Debbie, and I know it's been a minute, I don't recall anyone opposed, like any discussion of board members who were opposed to that. I think the conversation really just revolved around making it as flexible as possible for our candidates.
Right. Yeah, and just to see if they are, when they were making the decision, to see whether or not they had questions that we are not considering right now, and the answers to those questions.
Sure, I can send a link to that board meeting once I locate it.
We appreciate that. All right, Ms. Hanley, thank you for your patience.
Yeah, just super encouraged by this conversation. And increasing flexibility. And Kelly, this reminds me of work we did, together years ago around like the Praxis Core, right? And when we peeled back we saw very similar discrepancies in performance by race. We were seeing this dynamic where folks were performing really well in the classroom as teachers, but were struggling to pass the test. Other folks that were struggling in the classroom, but had no problem passing the test, right? And so we started questioning the test. And I don't remember, Kelly, and I don't know if you'll remember, whether it was Hopkins or another entity that sort of ran a study that looked at correlation between effectiveness as a teacher and performance on the test. And there was no correlation, which kind of confirmed what we were seeing, right? That you could you could get the highest possible score, but still struggle to teach, and then, the opposite of that. And of course, as we are continuing to see vacancies, like, we don't want to just create another barrier, especially if someone has proven to be. So I don't know if any similar study has been done on the correlation between performance on this test and effectiveness in the classroom. But that might be something that we could go to ETS with as well to see if something like that has been done. I would hate to have like an artificial barrier to entry in place.
Since I'm collecting the questions, would you like for me to be
That would be
the
great.
person, or to look to
Do you remember,
identify?
Kelly, who was it Hopkins? I feel like
I
it was
don't.
Hopkins.
Unfortunately, I don't recall that study. And I don't know off the top of my head if there are studies outside of that one, Grima, that look at that specific assessment. I do want to remind everyone, this is a statutory requirement.
Yeah.
And so if there are concerns about the requirement itself, then I think that that's a different conversation, and one that needs to be had in conjunction with the AIB. So just want to remind everyone of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think where we are right now is just we need some information to kind of interpret what it is that we're looking at and what the implications are of that. And again, something so important as this, I think certainly merits some questions. So moving forward, I think did anybody else have anything to add to this before I move on? All right, so then I think we've concluded that Ebony's open to anybody sending her questions, comments, points for discussion and so forth, and then we can begin to think about who would we ask to get answers to specific questions and what the implications would be for you. And then we have something to help guide us if we bring this back to the table, which I'm assuming we would. Ebony, did you have anything else to add to that?
No, I just wanted to honor Ms. Hanley's comment and tap into her memory around the findings around that assessment and offer, if we get to that point, any of the recent data on this issue, because there are data on this issue. I just couldn't remember what the findings show.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I appreciate your comments because that is exactly what this board often has concerns about as we try and move forward. All right, Kelly, thank you so much for walking us through that. We appreciate it. Great job, as always. All right, so before we adjourn, just a couple of quick things. I wanted to bring to you just a concern that I had. Ebony and I talked about this a little bit. We are starting to see more of an increase of, flying first class here where there's too much legroom. And that is the fact that, we're starting to see more and more people beginning to use the virtual option for the meetings. And I want to begin by saying I completely understand that. Our board is very unique in the fact that we have representation on the board that was defined by the legislature when they created us. So it's an extremely diverse group, but we also are a diverse group geographically. And the state has a lot of geography with very different terrain and lots of different weather. And my point to that is a lot of you have to travel great distances to come to the meetings. And I certainly do understand that. However, as our numbers of virtual membership starts to increase, the historical part of me, which I think has earned some of these gray hairs, also becomes a little worried about what that does to the perception of the validity of the board. And while I don't see this as any kind of issue right now, I can tell you historically, under previous administration, and this goes back a while, I think before anybody of you were on the board, we did face some serious questions about, is this really a valid board? People don't even meet. Our attendance would often drop, which is not a problem now, but the fact that they don't even meet as a group. So, for example, the state board generally produces this option to meet virtually almost as an emergency, almost as something where if you're desperate and you can't be here, that's the option. After COVID, we opened it up quite a bit to everyone, but I think it can lead to concerns about perceptions of, as I said, the validity of a board. Because I think there is a much richer discussion that can be had sometimes when people are actually here. And I would kind of hate to see us move to a board where only 2 people show up and everybody else comes in. Now, that being said, I certainly don't want to have anybody take offense to what I'm saying. I have family that live out in Western Maryland, and I got to tell you, the weather can change in 5 minutes. And I get how hard that drive is because I may get to see my family quite a bit. By the same token, we've got people who come from the Eastern Shore, and that's a drive too. And I understand what it's like to cross the Bay Bridge and so forth. So I totally get it. And I certainly don't want anyone to think that me bringing this up is a criticism of people not coming in person, because I'm not. I get it. I don't think anybody's done anything wrong here. But I think as we go through, that number starts to rise. And I think we do have to, as a board, kind of be cautious of that. So to that end, kind of what we were thinking is that we might want to look at the bylaws a little bit and potentially make the virtual option something that's in place for January, February, and March. But for future meetings, when the weather's not so much of an issue, do largely what the State Board of Education does, where this is a meeting by which people attend in person. And if you think back even more historically, this used to be, I'm not saying we bring this back, but to just produce a more congenial nature with the board, we would always produce lunch after. Like we would always go to adjourn and there would be a lunch for the full board and so forth. And that was just, and I'm not trying to say we bring that back. I think most people were quite happy to get on the road, but I can say that was another part of the board that was considered a cultural component of this board. Not that we were conducting business outside of the board, but it just allowed us to begin to gain a deeper understanding of the different, I think, viewpoints that people bring based on the areas they're from. So you don't quite get that sometimes when everyone's meeting virtually. It has its virtues, but it also has its drawbacks. So that's why I'm kind of, Ebony and I were thinking about maybe the best way to think about this. And that could be a proposed change to the bylaws. And again, it's not to make anybody's life more difficult, but I do want to try and increase the continued legitimacy of how the board is viewed. And that's where that comes from. I don't see any problems right now, but I can in the future based on the way the work of this board has been viewed in the past under previous administrations and so forth. So I kind of like to keep an in-person, robust board in place. So anyway, I'm very open to feedback on that. And again, I cannot stress more that I'm not criticizing anybody on the board. I've had to come on virtually through a number of times as well. I'm just thinking about the perceptions of the future. So if it is, unless I hear objection from the board, what I would kind of like is maybe for Kelly and Sean to kind of bring back some language that we might think about in order to sort of encourage more in-person participation within the board. Now, if the board decides that's not something that they want to do, well, then that's fine. We could reject it. But I would propose we think about tinkering with the bylaws. Not during times when the weather is bad, though. Now, that would also give us certainly the purview of saying, hey, listen, if we've got an agenda that's going to be 20 minutes or an hour, we're not going to bring everybody in. If there's an emergency that arises, we, of course, have that option to go. But just kind of maybe some language to consider to encourage a little more in-person meeting. Would anybody have an objection to that? I'm not putting in any changes. I'm just suggesting that maybe Kelly and Sean bring us back some language by which we could talk about it and maybe see how the board feels about that. Would there be any objections to moving forward just on that for maybe next meeting or the following meeting? And don't misunderstand, we're not taking away the virtual option now. This is something to consider as we move forward. Okay, I'm just looking around to see if there's any comment. All right, also, don't forget, that drive can be very difficult because, man, gas is expensive, although I think it's going down now a little bit. But there is mileage reimbursement for us and also reimbursement for the parking garage, too. So we've asked that paper copies of those be put out, but those can also be sent out online. So make sure you're turning in for your mileage if you do show up and so forth. All right, so now with that in mind, let's talk about additions for our next meeting. Kelly, do you have anything specific in place before we start to set the agenda?
So tentatively, I did reach out to the Maryland Higher Education Commission after the last meeting where we discussed potentially having them facilitate some of their institutions of higher education who receive the teacher diversity grant to come in and share some of the work that they're doing. And tentatively, they think that we can have someone come in February, but because we're relying on those institutions, it is tentative at this point.
I know one of those institutions very well, so just keep me posted. Okay.
And I'm assuming at some point we'll add in the legislative update, which we usually get?
Yes, that will start next month. And I'll be bringing you the pathways to teacher licensure for final adoption.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, well, definitely something to add. By the way, we did, Ebony and I did meet with AIB in December, just to continue exploring options for the survey and so forth. We each had some homework assignments to bring certain things and put onto a document folder. So I'm looking at some examples of other surveys that have been sent out, some issues of the TEL survey, local surveys and things. Ebony, you've got homework, I think, on that as well. You have a lot, and I was just realizing there's a date we're supposed to upload what we got, so we're planning future discussions. But AIB was extended a willingness to come and chat with the board just about our work on that and so forth. Now, I think that's probably not necessarily for the next meeting. I just wanted to let you know that they're willing to do that, so that's something to be added for subsequent meetings, I think, as we get a little more traction going forward. All right, is there anybody who had any specific items that they would like to see on the agenda for our next meeting? All right, well then, I would assume, Kelly, we're going to leave that to your discretion to create the agenda that best suits what our needs are, and yours as well. All right, is there any other item of business for the good of the board before we adjourn? I don't see any. All right. Well, Happy New Year, everybody, and thank you so much for coming. Whether you be virtual or in person, we so appreciate everybody's attendance here and the time it takes out of the day. So happy travels home. Without abstention, I will move that we end the January 8, 2026 meeting of PSTEB at 11:36. Any opposed? All right. Congratulations. Happy New Year, and congratulations on a productive meeting. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.